Like I said in the introduction, I think what we aim to do in the next 55 minutes is to understand the impact of regionalization, nearshoring on the global air freight industry. And I would like to open up this discussion, having each of the panel members to speak and speak your mind out and what is the sense that you make of these terms and what kind of impact do you see on the global air freight industry. I'd like to start with Tom. Tom is a man of data who actually crunches data, who's been 30 years, he's been responsible at Boeing creating the market outlook. Tom.
Good afternoon, Reggie, and welcome to Miami, who just
Thank
got
you.
off the airplane, less than 3 hours ago? So
Less than 2 hours ago.
yeah, so talk about real time. That's just in time is the nature of our business, air freight, and regionalization, friendshoring, nearshoring is a topic that I was asked to address when I was at Boeing Commercial Airplanes as long ago as, say, 2008 during the financial crisis. Does anybody remember how fast gasoline petrol prices rose in 2007 and 2008? By the summer, like July 2008, oil prices reached $144 per US dollars per barrel. And there was a advisory fund in Toronto, Canada, that was telling people that globalization was dead because container ships could not operate profitably at those fuel price levels. Newsflash, 17 years later, we still have globalization. It's a bit fractured in places, to put it mildly, but I'd say we're still in business because we all need each other on a planetary scale, very simplistically put. I will say that one of the things that kind of keeps me awake at night is great power rivalry between the United States, China, Russia, just to name a few. And I'll get more into that as we have this conversation going forward. But I'm very familiar with the topic, Reggie. And yes, I think there will be some realignments in this business, and I don't think it will be all bad.
Diego?
Well, good afternoon, everybody, as well. Thanks for the panel. And I think it's a good way to start it. Nearshoring and regionalization, and for us in air freight, we transport global trade. So nearshoring, it's been talking the last, especially after COVID, and especially for us in air freight after COVID, because they realized the supply chain had a big disruption, and then how does the countries align their supply and demand? And we saw a lot, especially in our markets where we operate, we are very focused on Latin America. We saw a lot of Mexico coming to the stage, especially with the trade with the U.S., overpassing China, for example, and that was called the nearshoring, how this supply chain moves closer to the demand, and also in our, so what we move is the global trade. So all this kind of shuffle, it's not in the day one, it takes a long time, but especially in the air freight, we are the first ones to see that impact, right? Because first things move on the air freight because it's urgent, or because there was a big disruption, or because it's sensible or perishable or whatever. So usually the air freight sees better, or more than better, sees first this kind of disruption. That's what we live. Part of what we live in air freight is disruption in supply chain. In what happened now with the tariffs here in the U.S., U.S. used to be the biggest lane, probably still the biggest lane, one of the biggest, but then there was a big shuffle there, and now you see much more coming from Taiwan, from Vietnam, just to name a few of this kind of change that impacted a lot in the air freight. And the air freight has to respond quickly and to be adaptable and to make sure where and how you want to operate.
Thanks. Kis, what is the sense that you make of these terms?
Thanks, Rehi. Kes Nielsen, Amazon.com. I will just start by, I believe in transparency and managing expectations. I'm here very humbly as a new addition to the air industry at Amazon. And I'm here to, I'm by far the least qualified person on this panel with 2 months of experience, but 20 plus years of experience at Amazon and in e-commerce. So I definitely think of things through an e-commerce lens. And I think one way that you can think about nearshoring and regionalization is to some degree as a response to the kind of customer expectations that we all have now as a result of being kind of 30 years into e-commerce, and the expectations that folks have of being able to get things very, very quickly and to get a very large selection of things very, very quickly. So it's not just, you know, some concentrated selection of things. It's expectations of vast range and incredible speed and convenience. And nearshoring, regionalization is a way to square that kind of trade-off, right? That square the circle and meet those kind of expectations and reconcile the tensions inherent in those expectations. So I think all of that plays out, you know, for us in some of the recent growth in our network, partnering with Avianca, for example, on Miami to Bogota, and finding a way there to meet, you know, customer expectations for increasing speed of Amazon deliveries on the southbound kind of side of things, and by partnering together, finding a way to meet some of Avianca's goals of getting stuff northbound. And you know, I think that's a kind of a logical consequence of these changing customer expectations and ever heightened customer expectations.
Jared?
Good afternoon. First, I want to say Happy Veterans Day to you all. It's an important American holiday where we celebrate our military, so thank you for that. You know, as far as when we say nearshoring, I think of China plus one. I think a lot of different concepts, friendly shoring, or, you know, there's many different words to describe a reshifting, and you have to think about how it started. What is that in response to, right? So nearshoring is in response to maybe oil prices, maybe political climate, et cetera. But I think, you know, the nearshoring, for example, benefited Mexico, as Diego said, and that's happened now. That is also reshifting every day, right? So tariffs went into effect this year, and that's kind of redefining how that nearshoring is even viewed, right? So I think that's an important concept to look for. I think we're going to continue to see globalization. I think we all depend on each other. I think the world commonly accepts that. But at the same time, we also have to be ready in response to the reshifting, right? So the U.S. relationship with China, how does that impact all of that, right? And so I think we have to be ready as a business. So AGI is a ground handling company, right? And we're pretty much in most airports in the U.S. Or North America. And I have to say, we have to be ready for that tide to change, right? And the only way for us to really stay ahead of these constant shifts is through technology, right? And embracing technology. And I know everybody talks about technology, but the truth is most people don't really embrace it full-heartedly until you have a need, right? Need is the mother of, you know, engineering, right? So I think that's the point is, from our perspective, is being ready for that constant reshift. Our world is constantly changing. As we sit here today, the world is moving at 1,000 miles an hour, right? And so I think it's important to know that we have to be ready for that change and the constant reshifting.
Since Jared mentioned about China plus one, and it has gone on to become China plus one or China plus 11, China plus X, there was a DHL report which actually talked about, it is not just about manufacturing diversification, de-risking global supply chains, but we have been seeing that for not just in the last 6 months or 1 year, it's been there for the last 5-6 years. I think COVID just accelerated the need for global manufacturing companies to diversify their supply base, diversify their production. Then, of course, we also have seen how global geopolitics have kind of reignited the concept of being friendly, friendshoring. As a result, there has been quite a lot of regional blocks creating new trade lanes, a new trade relationship. These are good, I think, for the global air freight industry. As a cliched statement, which is like water will flow. It's if it hits a rock, it will find its way around to flow. So the businesses will flow. I think with this, I'd like to.
So Reggie, I just wanted to add one thing. I'll put out there what we wish would happen from a ground handling perspective in the U.S. is that we get to see a reshifting of cargo. So if you think about in the U.S., right, most of our cargo flows through maybe 6 ports in the U.S.
Yep.
Would love to see that kind of reorganize itself into more airports in the U.S. We saw, for example, small airports like LCK, PVG, not PVG, sorry, CVG. But smaller airports that are rising, and so I think it's important that we try to move it in that direction if there is a possibility of doing that, right? Because everything is sort of concentrated, right?
Okay, I think the next question is about where are the biggest pressure points today, whether it is airports, ground handling, or customs. I would like both Diego and Jared to talk about that. Where are the pressure points when it comes to the reorganization of global trade movement as well as the global cargo movement? Jared.
Well, I think those 3 things are interconnected, right? They're all symbiotic, right? If there's, I'm not sure where one begins and one ends, right? So I think for us, our biggest pain points, right? I would say it's customs, getting airport badging, right? We have 13,000 employees about in North America, and so we are constantly dealing with the constraints of airports and not so much the airport, but customs as an organization. Well, that is a pain point, right? Labor has pretty much stabilized in the U.S., right? If you think about those COVID days where you couldn't find people, but the idea of that's a major pinpoint for us, right? It takes about 6 to 8 weeks to get an employee onboarded at an airport, and so I think that I would say that was our most important one. And then there's infrastructure, right? We've been working and partnering with airports across the country, especially the major hubs, and small airports too. Simon here is here from CVG, and he knows. So adding infrastructure, not just infrastructure, but smart infrastructure, right? Adding technology to that infrastructure so that it utilizes the most of the building possible. We track utilization of a building as a business and every single facility we have in the network. So I think infrastructure is an important part on the airport side, and I think we've come a long way from not being seen. So I came from a cargo legacy, and I've been in this industry my entire life, right? But since I was 21. But I think airports have embraced cargo. Well, that thanks to COVID, right? Before, they didn't know what us funny guys did in the corner of an airport. But I think most airports really want to engage and help us. And so that has been a huge positive in the past few years since COVID. And so I'm pretty optimistic that the infrastructure part will be resolved. Yeah.
Diego?
Well, to add on that, it's, more than one pain point. We're all interdependent, right? For us as an airline, we are partners here, not only with Amazon, as Kes said, but also with AGI. It's one of our biggest suppliers in ramp and the handling side. But we don't depend only on this side, not only the ramp, not only the handling, also the airport. And then just giving examples, as Jared is saying, there's a lot of concentration, for example, in Latin America markets to Miami. So we are highly dependent on Miami. Most of the cargo comes in to Miami, and then they truck everywhere. All this cargo truck up to Canada. They truck up to almost California as well. So it's, first thing is where's the location, right? And then all the customs, clearance, systems, and how easy it is to break down, how easy it is to access, and then how easy it is to get to the customers, will be highly dependent. For example, Miami, especially for the perishables from South America, is more than highly dependent. there's also a location thing. There's also infrastructure. There's also the airport investing in warehousing, in accessibility. So for example, we can deliver a cargo that coming from Colombia, from Ecuador, to our customers in 40 minutes, for example. So that's easy, and that is more efficient, so that all the supply chain can charge probably more competitive than a second airport. That doesn't mean that you can't fly to different ones. We fly also to the West Coast. We fly to different ones here. You also see, just not giving the U.S. example, after COVID, during COVID, different airports shining also in Europe. Those used to be the same ones. Now you see a lot of in Belgium, a lot of so Liège, Brussels, Maastricht. So different airports. That's probably much more cargo than passenger, in some sense, because they align not only the location but also the customs, the facility, the way to deliver to the customers, how they connected to the whole supply chain. So it's not that, for example, in our case, moving flowers, to give an example, it's not just Avianca and the Miami date. It's also the CBP. It's also from how things is aligned from the customer as well, how the clearance and the accessibility. So those are the main pain points, but the infrastructure and how connected with technology it is makes it easier or harder.
Yeah. I think that's one thing that's very evident in the last 2-3 years. We've been following how the cargo-friendly airports in the tier 2 or tier 3 cities, that has really kind of facilitated cargo movements. Just we mentioned it since we mentioned about customs. I've been talking to a number of forwarders in the last few months. Something that they keep telling me is the entire documentation and customs, particularly once the de minimis was out and the different kinds of percentage of tariffs, and as an importer or exporter, that's not their core competency. Their core competency is to produce something and then find their market in different parts of the world. I don't know whether it's Tom or Kes want to add something on the importance of this documentation, how challenging that has become, how complex that has become over the last 6 months, ever since the new tariffs has kicked in and the de minimis was taken out.
Reggie, to be honest, I've not delved too much into that tactical level of what most folks in this room have to deal with on a day-to-day, but I will bring up a couple of pinch points that I think are not mentioned in the narrative we're putting up here. First off, here in the United States, irrespective of where your political leanings might be, trade has been disrupted into this country. Newsflash, maybe you haven't heard that, but I was actually here in Miami 6 months ago for a freighter forum, and I was chair of a panel after the fireside chat with a guy named, why do I forget his name? This is a very senior moment for me. Fred Smith, the founder of FedEx. I actually got to thank him for his service. And so, Jared, thank you for reminding me today is Veterans Day. A shout out to all you veterans in the audience if you're out there. Thank you for your service. I actually got to say that to Fred Smith. Sadly, he passed away less than 6 weeks later. But that was the week that all the de minimis was coming off. That was the week where all these tariffs were going up, and they were changing by country by day. How in the hell do you work with a regime like that changes from day to day, okay, to put it very bluntly? So we in the air freight industry, I say you all, I'm just an observer, you have to be flexible. So, but Fred had a really good point. He was not concerned at all. He said to his companion on stage, a guy named Bob Convey from AEI in California, basically said, you know, Bob, it's like this. Trade is like water in a river. If it encounters an obstacle like a rock, it flows around it. And that's exactly what's happening right now. So Transpac numbers have fallen really massively in terms of market numbers, in terms of growth. Yields have been kind of weak depending on your market, in some cases weaker than others. But yields still are only down like pennies per kilo compared to where they were a year ago. It's different on the ocean side. Ocean prices have been much more volatile and recently very negative. But Point out that that's one obstacle, is just the tariff regime, particularly, and there's all these tit for tats going on right now with respect to the United States and trade, and we have to work through that, right? Secondly, as I mentioned the great power rivalry thing earlier, most of us think that the air transport industry is completely recovered from the COVID era. Newsflash for you, no it hasn't. Case in point. And it's not necessarily due to COVID, but let's take a step back. So in February 2022, Russia launched a war of aggression against Ukraine in the name of reunification of the former Soviet Union. I have a stake in this, and I have family in that part of the world. But why is it important here? Russian airspace is closed to most Western airlines. Not all, but most. There are carriers who do have access to Russian airspace. But did you know that the transpac market is missing 15% of the wide-body seats that were available on the Trans-Pacific from East Asia to and from the U.S. compared to 2019? This year, 15% down. If you're missing that many seats, proportionately, your belly capacity is 15% down. What's happening in response to that? The freighter industry, especially the large wide-body freighters that carry more than 80 metric tons of useful load, so the 747s that are remaining out there, all the 777s, the MD-11s, which are grounded as of last Friday night, are those aircraft that can carry that right now. And that fleet has only grown 10% in the last 6 years in terms of sheer numbers of aircraft active, but the actual flown hours is up 36%. So these are some of the consequences of what we're dealing with, pinch points in our business. And it's probably going to be, we're going to have to rely on folks like the Amazon Air Network, which uses A330s, 767s, 737s. Diogo's got a fleet of A330 freighters to fill. There's going to be higher demand for medium wide-body freighters in regionalization if it all comes to play. I could go on and on, Reggie, but I don't want to dominate the panel forever.
Casey, you want to add anything more? Otherwise, I have the next question for you.
We can maybe take notes.
Yes. Okay. Since we are talking about in a situation something like this, I think partnerships are so important. Sometimes it's easy said than done. How critical is partnership for something like this?
Well, I think I noticed right here in your notes you had a phrase, partnerships are the new infrastructure, which I liked, and it was kind of good food for thought for me. And I've definitely seen that pattern play out across a bunch of industries, actually, and it's a pattern that Amazon's quite familiar with. If you think about AWS, Amazon Web Services, for example, a lot of the growth that we had with that business was really dependent on fantastic partnerships, and they're a way to scale, and they're also a way to hold each other accountable. And in that mutual accountability, you drive better results for each other and also for customers. So I think they're incredibly important. I think there are four actually key components I would think of in terms of great partnerships. One is transparency. I think it's important right from the beginning to have real clarity on what each other's kind of requirements are, what your goals are, maybe what your limitations are too, and priorities are. I think having complementary strengths really help. All the best teams have people who can play their position really strongly, and that strikes me as particularly relevant in our industry, where we have routes, for example, where there are new opportunities that come into play when you can combine those kind of complementary strengths. And I think shared accountability is really important in a partnership. Having a sense of shared goals and a common kind of sense of how you're going to measure those goals and hold each other accountable to them. And then the fourth one that seems really important to me is a sense of mutual benefit. Both parties or all parties in a multi-partnership need to have a reason to be there, and that needs to be sustainable over time. And so all of those ingredients, I think, can result in a really kind of sustained and strong partnership. And then by being consistent and predictable over time, I think you can create between you a great service for customers.
I like both Diego and Jared to come in. We have also seen how cargo communities centered around or anchored around airports have become, may not be that much in the Americas, but we have seen it elsewhere, how different stakeholders are coming together, anchored around airports. Maybe how are partnerships so important to really increase the customer satisfaction, or basically to support the customers?
Well, that's a good one. And personally, I do believe a lot in that. First, as Kez was saying, I think that he highlighted all the 4 points that I also think it's very important. The first step is look inside, right? What are the agenda that your company have? What are you playing? So in our case, we play in Latin America. So that's the market that we know. We are based in Colombia. We're also based in Mexico. We have our main hub in Miami. So we know the strengths of those markets and how we want to be in that market. Is it the best efficiency or the best on-time performance or the best pricing or best service? So you can pick different ones, not excluded. But in our case, for example, we started a big transformation of the company in the last 3 or 4 years to not only be a recognized, very long-time carrier for the Colombian and Ecuador market to the U.S., but also how can we operate all different markets, all the important markets in South and Central America, and how that we want to be recognized as the player that is doing those markets. So for example, we do partnership with Jared, as I said. So he has to operate for us in the ramp side, the handling side, and he has to know, as Kes said, the transparency, how as Avianca Cargo is transparent on how we're going to grow or how we're going to take some operations out of Miami and go to elsewhere that it's not AGI, for example, and then all this proximity, closing, very close relationship and partnership, it's very important for both parties, so he can take and adapt to either way. So the first is, what are your company doing in terms of where you're doing your business? And then second, when you are recognized, you probably have companies that can strengthen doing bigger partnerships, as we did, for example, with Amazon. If it was 2 or 3 years ago, probably we wouldn't be a good partner or even considered as a partner for them because we weren't ready to do those kind of partnerships. So that's why I was saying that first you have to know what your strengths and where you're aiming for, and then if it's aligned with a different partner, we're not willing to fly everywhere in the world. We're not willing to fly in Asia, for example, but we do move a lot of cargo out of Asia and into Asia. Because we have strong partnerships in that sense. So how can I don't have a 747 and 777 to fly to Asia, but I can get there. So that's the most important part of knowing your business and know where you can develop different markets. For example, in Amazon, we are exploring much more in the US market, that we just fly to Miami, basically to Miami and then a little bit to LAX. But we're now capturing cargo much more different places in the US because of that, for just to give an example. And then out of Asia, with different partners as well, we did a lot of transformation as well in the partners that we have selling to us in Asia, in Hong Kong, Shanghai, and in Japan. So we can access to our strength, which is be the preferred carrier in the Latin America. So those want to fly in and fly out and fly within Latin America would probably be willing to partner with us. So that's the way I put it, and that's the way I think it's enabling all the partnerships that we're doing with different airlines. Not only the biggest one we have is Amazon, but also Turkish, Cathay Pacific, and other carriers that we can sum to our strategy.
Jared, partnership, collaboration, leading to greater speed and enhancing ground connections?
Yeah, I think it's important now, speed more than ever, right? So as we look at the business and growing, the business always going to.
Could you try again?
I put it on mute, I swear. So as we think about growth in the future and the speed that we need to be operating at, we talked about flexibility earlier and the ever-changing climate that we find ourselves in, human nature. I think speed is more important, and it's within hand. It's within grasp. We at AGI, we invested in about 2 years ago. We started about 10 different technology projects to make our warehouses less paper reliant, faster. If you think about a warehouse at an airport, it's meant to be a throughput. It's not meant to be a storage facility, right? And so we need to get the cargo out of there as quick as we can. Our goal ultimately is to have trucks in and out within 15 to 30 minutes. It's reachable, right? And I think all of those 10 different projects that we did, like skip the front counter, that means trucks don't have to get off and do a bunch of paperwork at our counter. They've already done it on an app, right? And so with that, as the entire industry embraces that, right? Because it's not just us. Like we can present this great technology, but nobody uses it. It doesn't help anybody. So I think that's going to relate to speed. We all have to embrace technology, but that is the way forward. With the partnering impact, I think Kez and Diogo spoke to it very well. So I would just want to highlight a couple things that Kez said. So if you think about clarity, going into a partnership and knowing who you are first, so being honest with you, so that you can be honest with your partner, is going to be immensely helpful. All right. And then understanding that you need to both win. It's not a win-lose. And if you have that partnership, it's not going to last very long. You're not going to be friends very long. So I think it has to be an even keel for both sides. So I would say just wanted to highlight on 2 points you touched on, but you spoke to it very well. That's it.
Thanks. I think the keywords are win-win and transparency. Tom, my next question is to you. How are you looking at nearshoring and altering the traditional long-haul patterns? Are we seeing true model shift or just added complexity in the regional markets?
I think the latter. That is, we're seeing more complexity. As I mentioned earlier, we had a major shift in trade policy in the past year, especially starting since late January and the ascendancy of the Trump administration in the White House. So in May, trans-Pacific markets in terms of ton kilometers of cargo carried both on passenger bellies as freighters collapsed like 10%. Notice I use the big word collapse. Funnily enough, all of a sudden, intra-Far East and outbound ex-Asia to Europe via some cases via the Middle East have been booming. And then coincidentally, a market that's not really known for growth, the transatlantic has not done too badly this year, in my opinion. Now, the yields have softened here and there, but yields are still much better than where they were 6 years ago on the transatlantic. So we're seeing that shift. The other thing is, can I see a show of hands? Who here is an Apple iPhone user? Real quick. In this country, if you buy one, they used to be made, guess where? In China. But in the last 18 months, I believe all U.S. sold iPhones are made in India. Does that sound right?
That's right.
Samsung. Those of you who are Samsung Galaxy users, like me, much to the chagrin of my wife, who can't track me, by the way, they're made increasingly in Vietnam. You could almost walk from Korea to Vietnam on a cargo plane. It's that the amount of capacity that's moving back and forth. And that predates the virus. So we're seeing all these little shifts. We call it, and it's basically a diversification. It's not a kind of a offshoring, or it is not necessarily nearshoring. It's what you were talking about, China plus X. That's what we're seeing, is that supply chains are diversifying. And I think we're seeing a lot of that also in response to the COVID experience, when there were shortages of goods in much of the world, and air freight came to the rescue. And freighters were very much in vogue for about 18 months. So we're basically still living out that chapter of the development of the trade nature of our civilization. And it's really interesting going forward. Did I effectively dodge your question, Reggie?
I don't know, Diego, you would like to add your comments on the model shift, and probably since you are, I don't call yourself as a regional operator. You do fly into international destination. Is there a larger regional complexity in the market?
Well, we do operate different places, but it's all connected to our main
Correct.
strategy. So that's why I always mention that we want to be the preferred carrier in that region, but flying in and out. But there's also complexity for sure. For example, we are, as everybody said here, and the tariffs, it was something new for the last, I don't know, 10 months already now, or 11, because it started not only the rumors, but also all the tweeters and everything about January, actually. We were in the middle of Valentine's, was the first one, and it actually was with Colombia, with our main home market. That will be some tariffs over our specific country. So, and just to give an idea, U.S. is the biggest importer of all the exports of air freight for all the Latin American markets, either coming through Europe, either coming from Asia via Europe or via also U.S. That's a lot of uncertainty. So what will be the next day? And then, as also Tom said, the water finds its way, but it can find its way in a different market that I'm not in. So we could shift to flowers, I don't know, in Africa. So I'm not operating there. So the company, what will be about the company? So you have to look in your garden. So the water shifts that way. So how am I adapting to this new reality, right? In our case, 50% or 45%, it's perishables. So we're highly dependent on the U.S. Those markets that we operate highly dependent on the U.S. as well. And besides the Trans-Pacific shift between countries, all the cargo connecting via USA was not very much impacted. So they can still connect it and come to our markets via Europe, via other markets. But you have, again, the water will find its way, and you also have to find its way on how do you adapt your reality to find those markets. For example, we are putting a lot of capacity this year, so where we want to deploy it. We also shift the markets, right? Because if you're more consistent, more efficient, and driving very close to your customers, you can design solutions to them, going and finding that way around for the markets. That's what we're actually doing in terms of we're not just lucky, but also by design. We started this, for example, this much bigger presence in Asia. Yeah. Long ago, we used to move 4 times less than we move today from Asia 2 years ago. And that was before the tariffs. And we still are able to move a lot around, and we keep increasing because the way we operate here. So it's very well connected, but if you're not, so for example, there are flights now, not only connecting via Miami or via Europe, but flying directly from Asia to São Paulo, to Argentina, to Chile, to also Colombia and Ecuador. So those 777s, 747s flying through elsewhere now are flying into markets. So how do you operate with them in terms of adapting your business to find a way out to be competitive?
So Diego, my question is, how complex is the resetting of your network and realigning your relationship with your key customers, your forwarders and shippers in this context?
Well, for sure it's complex. My answer would be first going back to be very close to the customer. That's key, because if you look in the air freight, I don't have the customer itself. I mean, I have an intermediary, like a freight forwarder that has a customer behind. So I don't talk to Apple. I don't talk to Samsung. I don't know if they're shifting to India, to China. But for sure, we have to be up to speed, up to date, but very close to the customer to understand what are they thinking on, and how you design that. But the main thing is the people. I mean, we are a B2B business. We have to have people very close to our customers, very close to our partners, very close to the solutions we want, so you can adapt and find a way out. So I would say the number one thing is how you get your people around and very talented people to be close to the solution.
Kes, let's talk about standards, global standards and incentives, and how do you align standards and incentives between global networks and regional specialists?
I think when I think about alignment, I always try to work backwards from what is the outcome and what does success look like. And if you can be aligned on what the outcome and the success metrics are, I think that is that's 90% of the battle in a partnership. And so, I think at Amazon and in software companies in general, you have this concept of loosely coupled services, teams that work independently on their part of the overall process and delivering and being accountable for their input. And as long as there's an agreement around what that part of the process is and what the success metrics look like for that process, it works very well. When you start to try and align and own every link and have control over every link in a chain, that becomes difficult to do, to get alignment and agreement around. And so I think starting from the outcome and agreement on the metrics, and then having a little more loose coupling and a little more flexibility for each of the partners and the parts of whatever that chain is in order to get to the right outcome is actually a more realistic kind of approach.
Tom?
What was the question again, Reggie? Is it about collaboration?
No, it's not on collaboration. It's not on collaboration. It's in global standards and incentives between global networks and regional specialists. And how do we align that?
Well, what I will say, and I'll just echo what my fellow panelists have said, is that communication is key, and constant communication. And preemptive communication, if you can warn your partner or your customer before surprises show up, that tends to lower the tone of their voice when you do have a follow-up conversation. That worked with me and my boss at Boeing, especially when I said the cargo forecast wasn't going to get done on time. But I will also add that in this business, what are people buying at the end of the day? What are our customers buying? They're buying what we would normally think is speed, right? Because the air freight is the fastest mode of transportation. I will go back to, though, I want to cite some research that was done by a consultancy some of you might remember called Merge Global. They were based outside Washington, D.C. back in the 90s up to about 2010 before they dissolved. They found that when they actually talked to shippers, okay, and what they collected that data, what they found was is that shippers, are you buying speed or something else? And that wasn't necessarily speed, it was reliability. That's what they were buying. Case in point, so you probably are measuring, actual time of delivery. I'm going to pick on Diogo up here, let's say 85, 90%. I'm just making numbers up, okay? But would you believe on the ocean side, a good day for them is if they're 50% on time. Can you imagine having that conversation with your customer? I wouldn't want to have it, but if you're monopolistic, you're the only boat that sails on that particular day for that particular route. Or string, as they call it in the ocean business, it's a different story. So, yeah, I would say communication is absolutely vital to survival in the air freight industry. Absolutely. How's that?
Okay, let's talk about artificial intelligence, automation in our processes, in our networks, and how do we make our processes more efficient. And I'd like to ask Jared to talk about automation, machine learning, AI, and how they are applied into cargo handling. How do they provide transparency, visibility to all stakeholders in the value chain? Any specific use cases that you can pick up, and then you can talk.
Yeah, so I've talked about technology quite a bit. I think AI is the new, and I know it's the sexy word of last year, but I think that has not yet fulfilled the promise that is there, the potential for it. And I think we're going to see a lot more of that. We're employing a lot more AI technology. So we started on the safety, for example. I'll talk about us. We started on the safety side. So we empowered all our cameras that sat there idly in all our warehouses with AI technology that looks at safety behavior, and we're able to coach employees, right? And we're able to constantly, so we took a dumb device and made it smarter, right? And our investment was really in the way of safety, number one. We did that in trucks as well. And so our trucks, any moving vehicle has a camera that is constantly looking with AI technology piece to it. If you're on the phone, if you're doing, you'll be surprised how many crazy things happen in a truck. And by the way, when we deployed this technology, we saw the benefit of it, right? We didn't think it was going to be a big benefit, but it was huge, right? In the sense of, number one, safety, people weren't getting hurt. But number two, property value, all these things, our claims came down a ton, right? Which is the ultimate safety tracking method, right? So I think AI is going to still continue to do more for the warehouse piece, and that's what we're targeting for the next 3 years. When we talk about automation, it depends what level of engagement we're talking about, right? We would love to see a warehouse. If you're a warehouse handler, if you're Diogo and he's got a busy hub in Miami, he would love to see where robots come in and build a pallet for you and do all these fancy things. I don't see that happening in the next 3 years, but I do see the beginnings of it. And so I think more investment needs to be had by the likes of us all in that realm, and probably Amazon will build one of those. But no, I think the biggest thing, the shoe to drop, is really AI technology. It is, we've seen the great benefits of it, and I think transforming that into reality is what our mission is going to be in the next 3 years, right?
Diego? Technology, adoption, digitalization in air cargo processes, these are, we keep hearing this, how much of that is actually really increasing the customer satisfaction and speed and reliability in air cargo processes.
Yep, I agree with Jared that it's much more talked than seen, especially in the cargo business. But when we look inside, for example, safety as well, we kind of have the same in terms of surveillance and information coming from the safety side, and also in maintenance. Maintenance is also a big part of how can we deploy more AI in our predictability, to be more predictable with the maintenance with planes as well, because that gives you more or less ground time or air time with the planes, especially in the customer experience side as well. So how can be more connected, predictable, and information on everybody's also expecting for revenue in the revenue management. We don't see that much just yet. We do see some, but not much. And especially because we're not a very online business in terms of trading and selling and booking. There is, but not mainly, as, for example, our other part of the company as a passenger. You see much more influence in AI. But there is a lot of initiatives, so I do agree with Jared that we are seeing much more to come that will be transforming, and especially how you connect. For example, we were saying in the beginning with the customs. We're a lot of our markets, we still have to go with the paper for customs. That's very far away from AI. You don't need AI to take out that. You probably need something. AI can help, but we have much more technology to take those papers out, but it's just the governments in some places that we operate it's not adapted yet. So there's a lot of expectations. I see everybody wanting to go there. And also from IATA, from airlines, from partners, from everybody willing to be more efficient. And for sure, technology is the #1 tool that we have to not only to be better information, better transparency, better everything, but more efficient. The efficiency here is key, and we know that we need to fly in as much as we we need with the planes. So maintenance plays a big role here. Also, the information, the turnaround time with the airports, the most of you can take out in terms of connectivity will help as well the turnaround time in the airplanes. So all these are very interconnected, but yet in the air cargo business, I don't see much.
Okay. I'm just going to add one comment. And as an industry, this is in context. As an industry, cargo has not been great at adopting technology. How many of us have heard the term e-airway bill, right? So we've been hearing that for past 20, 25 years. We still haven't seen it, right? And the technology's there, but we still have a stack of paper that comes off an airplane every time it lands, right? So I think it's important. I'm saying this more to get us all focused and get us pushed forward onto this technology bandwagon. Okay.
Guess, did you get a cultural shock as you moved? You're just 2 months in the air cargo industry, moved from Amazon.com. So the adoption of technology and digitalization in our industry, did that actually shock you?
Well, I think there are some very good reasons for why we are where we are. This is an industry that requires a great deal of care, and it's somewhat conservative, as for very good reasons around safety and appropriate kind of regulations and care. I do think that, in general, not just in the air industry, we are at an inflection point with AI, and we have a different kind of AI. So, at Amazon, we've been using machine learning for the last 30 years, and actually, I think lots of people in the industry have been using machine learning to some degree. It's a kind of a deterministic type of artificial intelligence that helps with planning and forecasting and network optimization, stuff like that. What we have now, though, is generative AI, and we have agentic AI. And so what you have is the possibility for multiple artificial intelligences to collaborate, and that adds a whole bunch more nuance and a lot more scope in terms of what you can achieve. And so, what we're seeing at Amazon is that increasingly we're writing code with artificial intelligence. And so when you can scale, because you can actually set some parameters, some expectations, some goals, and you can actually write the code using the artificial intelligence, that significantly accelerates and opens up the possibility of closing the gap that some of you have been describing. Some of those challenges, I think, become much easier to solve when you actually have that kind of intelligence at work. So I think we're at an inflection point.
Tom, do you have a reflection on this? 30 seconds.
I will echo everything that Cass just said, and just to say that the adoption of any form of technology, including the latest buzzwords around AI, revolves around basically making your operation more efficient and less costly. Because otherwise, if you don't do it, your competitors will. How does that for a closer?
Okay, the final question. As we look at regionalization, globalization, even though I said in the question that it's next 1 decade, I think it's too long for us to predict anything. I think from each one of you, what is that one thing that you're bullish about in the next 2 years? I think that's long enough. The world is moving so fast. Any specific factor, an element that is actually going to be, that you're watching out, that you're bullish about for the next 2 years? Diego?
Probably answering in a different way. Well, for sure, we're in the air freight, looking to the markets that we operate. How can we keep increasing our presence? How we keep increasing our level of service, partners, everything. But the one thing that I most value, that how can we be prepared to the next 2 or 10, because we don't do planning for 2, we do for 10 or more, because we're flying cargo for more than 100 years now, as Avianca, as a group, is mainly 3 things, like how to be prepared with the companies. First, it's what are the processes? what are the people, and what are the technology you need. So if you look in those three scopes, you'll be ready for a COVID, the next COVID. We hope that we don't see that, but how your company is doing the right things and the right agenda with the right partners and the right markets, and to be adaptable and better than your next competence that flying in the same region. But those three things are mainly very highly important. So people, process, and technology for me are key for the next 2 or 10, 15 years.
15, 10 years too long. Next 2 years. Jared.
So I would say one thing, and I'm going to go back to this technology, and sorry to sound, but I think what Kes said was important. AI is, you said, an inflection point. I see it more like a point where we can do a quantum leap in how we think about aviation as a whole. How, you know, Diogo talked about maintenance. I never even think about that because I don't operate airplanes, but how predictive technology could enhance that, right? And so I think there's, with this AI platform that Kes very eloquently put together, I didn't even know those different types of AIs, but the idea is that there is a platform now that can really facilitate a quantum leap in our industry, and we're just starting to see that.
Kes?
I think, you know, one of the ways that we think about things at Amazon is in terms of what durably matters for customers. What will customers care about in 2 years, 10 years, 20 years, and beyond? And then really obsessing about ensuring that we are continuing to meet and hopefully reset those kind of expectations over time and continue to delight customers. And so for us, you know, it's going to be about continuing to obsess about, we're 1 year in, just over a year as a business, Amazon Air Cargo. We have a on-time delivery rate actually of 98.9%, which we will be kind of jealously protecting and trying to build on. And so what I'm excited about in the near term is by the end of the year, we'll have launched our online booking portal. That's kind of table stakes to be able to quote and book online. We'll want to build on that, and as we scale, be able to maintain that kind of delivery. And you know, we're also, but at the same time, we'll be launching a money-back guarantee so that we are holding ourselves accountable to that kind of on-time delivery. And so, really for us, it's about continuing to obsess about the things that we know customers will care about, not just in 2 years' time, but in 20 years' time, and that's reliability and speed and price.
Tom, final word to you.
Well, we're up here talking about nearshoring, regionalization. I would say I'm very bullish on all those countries that are becoming beneficiaries of China Plus X. So your native India, for example, here in this hemisphere, because of its proximity relative to the U.S. market, Mexico. Mexico air freight industry is growing, largely to an extent because of what's happened with trade policy in this country, believe it or not. Kind of ironic, I might add. But there's also a huge, I would say, just recently starting to be tapped consumer base in much of the developing world, not necessarily oriented in North America or Europe, but think about we haven't even mentioned Africa. But you know, Diogo's pointed out like big growing markets like in Brazil and Chile and Argentina, and import markets of e-com coming, dare I say it, mostly out of China. But there'll be other places where it originates. So trade disruption, we are the mode that responds the fastest. We're the mode that actually has the most opportunity, in my opinion.
With that note, we'd like to end the conversation. I think COVID has taught us, all of us, to be creative. We do not have a control on geopolitics, and to large extent, geopolitics determines global trade. But what we can do is to be creative as to how do we adapt ourselves and to be resilient in how we respond to the customer demands. I think we have proved, all of us in this room have proved how we dealt with a situation, something like COVID. We have next challenge, and maybe in the next 6 months we would have another challenge. I wish that all of us continue to be creative and respond to the needs of your customer. With that note, I'd like to thank my panel members. Put your hands together for Diego, Jared, Kes, and Tom. Thank you so much.